What if everything we've been told about autoimmunity is wrong? I'm Elizabeth Yarnell. After awakening partially blind one morning in 1999, a doctor told me my multiple sclerosis would put me in a wheelchair within 10 years. I refused to accept that as the end of the story, so I started investigating. Welcome to the Inflammation Investigator, the podcast that uncovers the inflammation lurking underneath your ailments. Because autoimmune and chronic conditions should not be viewed as death knells when they are actually alarm bells. I'm a traditional naturopath and founder of the Inflammation Academy. And in 2 episodes every week, we dig into what conventional medicine might be missing. If you're living with chronic or unexplained symptoms, this investigation is for you. Your body has been trying to tell you something. Let's start listening. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Inflammation Investigator. Today, we're going to talk about Ayurveda, and we're going to be speaking with an Ayurvedic practitioner, and we're really going to talk about the way that Ayurveda views inflammation, which is not quite the same as we are used to in our conventional medical world. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Brett Aldrich. She is the founder of Seed the Spirit, an Ayurvedic healthcare counselor and a breathwork practitioner whose life and work have both been devoted to service, healing, and empowerment. Her professional journey began in crisis support, helping survivors of domestic violence, guiding families through loss, and advocating for victims of crime before she shifted her focus to raising her 3 children. She later worked in special education, supporting children with developmental needs, while deepening her education and her training in holistic health. A graduate of the Kripalu School of Ayurveda, Brett also holds advanced training in Ayurveda of the mind, Ayurvedic herbology for women's reproductive health, yoga nidra, restorative yoga, trauma sensitive yoga, and has trained in spiral dance breathwork. Now affiliated with the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance, she offers a compassionate, integrative approach to wellness, helping clients create lasting transformation through simple, sustainable practices. So, Brett, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
I think this is a very interesting conversation we are about to have. Certainly, we haven't talked about anything like this before on the podcast. So,
Mhm.
I'm excited to dig into it. But let's
Me
start
too.
with, how did you get here to this place in your journey?
Oh gosh, there's so many layers to the process. I think I really can just go where I just was living my life how I was. It wasn't really
Hmm.
anything unusual. Normal, I think normal woman walking through the world and have children and busy life. With the expectations that I had held for myself, to be a mother, and then, eventually going back to work and all of that. And, my life was very busy, even without working a 40-hour work week. So I, over time, started to notice strange pain. I thought it was from exercise. I thought it was from, stress. Probably was stress, but I thought it was just me overdoing it, right? Physically, as an athlete a long
Hmm.
time ago. And so there was just a period of time in my life where I was just going to my doctor like I usually do. And I'm just like, I just don't feel right. I just don't feel right. Something's not right, you know. And I'm feeling a pain here, but then it goes away, and then I'm feeling one here. I have something going on with my shoulder, and then it's here today, gone tomorrow. Hair loss, then it's coming back. All of these things were happening in my body, and I was, tests keep coming back. Oh, things are normal. Things are normal. And so during that time, I was practicing yoga as just a physical practice, the asana piece, the physical piece, and without really much understanding or knowledge of the expansiveness of it. And I'm a window shopper, and I was walking down the street, and went into the store and fell, my eyes fell towards this little piece of paper or card, and it said Ayurvedic practices, Dinacharya. And I was like, what's that? And so, I didn't know. I was clueless,
Uh-huh.
and it
Uh-huh.
said what to do, right? So, it gave me daily things to do, on how to massage and take care of my body every single day, what time of the day, is best to eat, what time of the days is best to do certain things. So, there's a kind of a clock when it comes to Ayurveda, and also some people consider it like circadian rhythm of your day, if you've heard of that before. So I just dove into that, not knowing what it was. And just that little bit that I started to do, I was like, I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to feel better. I'm noticing a difference. Um, and then, of course, all of a sudden, you see it once and then you start seeing it everywhere else again. So over time, I'm like, oh, okay. And then, I didn't even realize, I looked into it and, I looked online. I'm like, hey, what's this about? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can get educated in this. And I thought to myself, well, this little teeny bit helped my body more than I thought. So I thought, why not find out and get my education in this and provide it as something for people? Because I don't know, no one around where I lived was doing this. So I thought it was like important to try and learn. And it was also a time in my life where I was like, oh, it's time. I think I'm ready for a change. I think I'm ready to take on something new and offer something. Because the typical lifestyle of like going to school, going to work, coming home it wasn't calling me. So this is what fell into my lap. Um, and over time in my life, it's come to an understanding where when anything happened, like if anything physical happened in my life, of course, like even we practice healthy life practices, we can still become ill, even when think we're doing all the right things. And over time, it just became something that I had an awareness and understanding of myself so well that if something did happen, I didn't panic.
Mm.
And I was able to start working through it. Even some of the hardest things ever, even some of the things that caught me off guard. Um, Even the things where I did panic. There were a couple of moments where I did panic, but I knew eventually I was going to be okay. And then making those efforts towards getting better. Um, and understanding that there was a village that can help you. So this just opened my eyes to not just our allopathic and Western medicine, but all kinds of ways to seek out support, care, and well-being, because it really does take everything. In Ayurveda, it is the study of life, so it takes everything to get better because everything matters, and that's how it went. It's a long story, but that's basically it.
That's good, though. Let's, for people who may not be familiar with Ayurveda, what can we explain about what is Ayurveda? Where did it come from? How is it different?
Sure. Ayurveda is an ancient traditional or indigenous practice or indigenous medicine straight from India. They say about 5,000 years old. Who knows, really? But that's what we're estimating, right? That's the estimation. It came on as there were these, as they say, almost similar to Chinese medicine or any ancient indigenous medicine. It's a human being that came to a realization that this was how we could live and tend to our bodies and take care of ourselves. And it stems and it is based around elements, and we all are made out of elements. So it's, fire, water, earth, air, and ether. So we are
Hmm.
all made out of different combinations of these five elements. And it's a very simple understanding to something that could become much bigger and larger, right? And all of us are made out of these elements in different types of combinations of these elements. So not one person is the same. So we call it constitution or prakruti. And that is basically we have our own group of elements that describe us, how we behave, how we look, how we work in the world. And it assists us in figuring out a flow or a balance in our body. So, what we have more of in our body already, what we're already made out of, we don't always necessarily have to seek for it.
Hmm.
So, if you have a lot of water, if you're made, and there's characteristics and there's more to it, but if you are described to have a lot of water in your body, so you don't have to drink as much water as maybe somebody else, things like that. And or maybe if you have a lot of water, maybe have some things that have a little bit more fire in it, or a little bit more earth to it, maybe a little bit more air to it to balance it all out. So when you understand that about yourself, and a lot of what I do is education, I just teach people this stuff as well, because a lot of this is self-empowerment, is to give you the understanding of self and awareness. So when you take action to help yourself, you have a pretty good idea of what to do for yourself. And the hope is, that's a very small snippet, thumbnail sketch of it. It can become much more complicated and big. And, there's many of us out there that do so many, take on so many pieces of this practice, that there's like an awareness or ability to, work with just the body. There's also the one with the mind. There's also women's reproduction. It's all can be tended to with this, dare I say, basic understanding that there's elements, and then it develops into another piece called doshas. So you can have doshas. There's a vata pitta kapha doshas, and that's also what we're made out of. And so it's like a combination of these elements. So kapha is earth and water, vata is ether, air, and then pitta is fire and water. So, and we have different combinations of this, and it develops and is kind of created within our body. And it describes who we are and what we're like. And once we know, we can start navigating our world as such, once we have that self-awareness.
So Ayurveda doesn't prescribe pharmaceuticals. What does Ayurveda use for healing?
Sure. Again, the interesting thing about Ayurveda is that it's the study of life, right? So anything and everything is possible as a medicine when it comes to medicine. So
Uh-huh.
it doesn't prescribe prescription. However, we do have herbs, but there's
Uh-huh.
also diet and lifestyle. There's also the physical practice of yoga or any physical activity. I prescribe people to go dancing sometimes. If someone is feeling low in energy and they have a lot of water and earth in them, I'm like, hey, why don't you go, go get dancing and listen to some music and kind of rev yourself up a little bit. So there's so many different ways to prescribe activities for someone in order to get better. And the more complicated and the more severe and deep someone has, a disease or has been diagnosed with something, the deeper we go with our practice. So, everything from dancing to herbals, how we prescribe the herbals, how you take them changes. Like I could prescribe the same herb for 3 different people. However, those
Hmm.
people will take them in a different way, depending on what their prakriti is or their constitution is. So it can get very finite,
Uh-huh.
and but it can also be very simple as well, depending on the person's situation, depending on their mental capacity to take on a lot of information. Um, and when a lot of the times when I'm working with someone, if they've just been going through a lot and they come to me, usually they're at their tilt. They're like, I'm all, they're way far past the point of like, give me 100 things to do. Um, they just want to get better. So, and what we try to do is keep it as simple as possible to begin. I do anyhow to allow someone to start feeling some change, and then we start developing their practices or their lifestyle over time. Because the one big piece of Ayurveda is that one is like everything can be medicine, but everything can also be poisonous to you as well, depending on timing, quality, and quantity. But at the same
Uh-huh.
time, we want to make sure that we go at a slow pace, because if we do anything too quickly, it can also create more dysfunction or imbalance in the body. So it's a tightrope sometimes. It's a balance. We try to, and it's a little experimental as well. However, most of the practice, if not all of our practices, if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work, like, and then we try something new. Um, And that's the real nice thing about it. It is experimental, and it really is about just like opening and expanding your life too, as well, to any possibility of healing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it made me think of an animated movie that came out fairly recently called Elemental. Have you heard of that movie?
I've heard of the movie, but I have not seen it. Yes, I have not seen it. Yeah.
I think it's a Disney movie. I want to say Pixar, but I don't actually think it's Pixar now that I think about it. But it's basically each of the characters is an element. There's a fire character, there's a water character, there's an earth character. This is how the world is divided up into these elements. It's
Interesting.
very fun. Sometimes I think there are a couple of those animated movies that do a really nice job of um, not explaining, but kind of visualizing these types of philosophical beliefs and patterns. Um, so, how do you assess somebody and
Mhm.
understand what elements are in their psyche, their body?
Absolutely. There's many different ways, and sometimes I do a lot online too as well. So there's some things we navigate around that too. When we discuss, we do an intake or we have conversation around what's been going on. Um, I'm a big fan of waiting on knowing if someone's been diagnosed with something. I usually pause on the diagnosis because I'd like to get to know the human being on a whole big level.
Hmm.
Not that it's not important. Um, it's sometimes you want to kind of see the big picture before I really like kind of just look in one spot, right? Because something's happening because a lot of other things have occurred in order to get to that point. You know,
Hmm.
I think that's where I feel is like it took your whole life to get to this point to have this going on. So we're going to look at your whole life to find out where we can start finding the root cause of what's been happening. Because when we start developing and understanding the root cause and also assisting you on the outer, right? We're helping you on the outside, right? Any outside symptoms, but we're also trying to find the root reason why it's been occurring. So we can work from the interior and the exterior. So it kind of has no chance to run away, so to speak. So we do our best. So when we work with someone, we have conversation, we talk about history, some family history. We do the best we can to ask questions that are kind and caring, that really, have some understanding of like, this is you, give us information so we can better assist you. Um, we discuss diet, what are you already doing? We
Hmm.
discuss, any family history of something similar. We also discuss, we take pulse. So there's a way to take pulse. We check your tongue, your eyes, just like palliative care, what most people do. We check skin color. We check the shape of the eyes, the color of the eyes, what your hair, like everything on the outside usually shows what might be going on the inside. Um, we check nails. We check and see how do they stand? How are they holding their body? You know, um, we discuss their likes and their dislikes. We even go as far as like, what do you dream about? You know, we also, and because I do breath work, I also notice how they breathe. Are they holding their breath? Are they expanding their, diaphragm while they're speaking? Their cadence on how they speak. A lot of is all of that, the whole being shows us what's going on with them on a simpler level when it comes to the elemental piece, and their doshas. And then we go from there. We really
How
do.
does,
Yeah, it's a,
sorry, go ahead, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
No, but you brought up breath work, and I wondered how
Yeah.
does breath work feed into all of this and how is that connected?
Yes. It really,
And
yeah, go
maybe
ahead.
we should define what breath work is first.
Sure. It's so many things. So the interesting thing about breath work is depending on your philosophy and what you've been brought up and your understanding of breath work, everyone has their own perspective on breath work and what they think is best in general to use. I'm a big fan of all is possible. So there is the pranayam practices through yoga. That is a teaching of certain type of breathing techniques have a certain purpose. There's also, you know, the breath work that I was trained in that's like a circular breathing, cyclical breath that's been coined as like rebirthing. Some call it holotropic breathing. I don't want to say too many words that, but it's so there's that other piece too where the body feels like it can unfold and release stress in the body. A lot of the times, breath work assists in balancing the nervous system. So we want to be alert and aware, but not so heightened that we're feeling the stressors or unable to catch our breath, or there's an anxiousness that comes with that too as well. We want to make sure that, I do this a lot before a meeting with someone or a session too. We connect with breath first so we can feel a little lighter, feel a little less anxious. Sometimes it's utilized for someone that's feeling low and depressed as well. So it really does create a space of balance in the body to get back into rest and digest, that space of like neutrality. So you can focus and have the ability to, make decisions that are best for you. So understanding, like getting to that point of like neutrality so you can discuss your health so you can move forward and make choices that are in good standing. And that's usually kind of, and it allows you to kind of like stay away from the distractions around you, and allows you to kind of get back into your body and feel
If I
more.
were someone who'd never heard of the term breath work,
Mhm.
how would you explain it?
That is a good question. I joke around, people always say it is work. When they say breath work is work, you're like, it is a little bit of work. Um, when someone says to me, what really is that? What is it? And it really is a practice that is used that allows you to develop a inner spaciousness, right? It allows you to reconnect with your breath and your body at a pace that is best for you. So the body will breathe, and there are probably some parts of the body that might be a little tight. We're not going to force it. The breath allows it without forcing. So what I do, it's good to have a guide or have someone teach you some techniques in order to just use your body for your benefit, right? So the body has a way to heal. So if you can connect with your breath, that's a step in the right direction. What I like to do is say breathing is free. You don't have to, you can do it in the moment. And it is it is a thing that happens automatically in the body. What we do is we just try to reteach you how to do it in a way that best suits you. And that's what we usually do with breath work. Um,
So, would you say it's intentional breathing patterns versus I'm breathing every minute of every day?
right. There's many ways to look at it. So the breath work technique, the circular one, is to try to get to the point where you are taking a full diaphragmatic breath. So over time, you start to reteach your body to take a full diaphragmatic breath. Sometimes we hold our breath. Sometimes there are patterns that we create in the body when we breathe. So what we try to do is kind of send you towards the direction of like your first breath, the
And
full
what's the
diaphragmatic.
benefit of
Mhm.
that? What's the benefit of a full diaphragmatic breath?
Sure. Uh, you know, Technically it massages the organs, the internal organs. So the diaphragm itself kind of like is in the center, right? In the middle part, so there's all the organs underneath, which is, the liver, the pancreas, the colon, all of those. And then above is the heart and the lungs, right? And that full diaphragmatic breathing allows the body to receive, right? A kind of like a massage, right? It stimulates, it nourishes, you know, and it hydrates at the same time, and it allows the body to receive. the nutrients better too as well. So if you have, nourishment in the lungs, if you have nourishment in the heart, and if you have nourishment in the rest of the body is more able and apt to one, metabolize things better and easier, and to receive nourishment after breathing. So it really is about, each organ can metabolize differently, right? And so it's so the body will process life, process food, process the lifestyle even that much more. So you can
So
better
it's
benefit from your
more
life.
than just bringing oxygen into your body.
Absolutely. Yes, it's more than that. Oxygen is key, right? However, it does way more than that. And oxygen too does that. It opens up the vessels in the body, right? So when we start to open the vessels in the body, we call them shotamsis, like opening up the channels of the body. It opens up and provides space, right? And space allows more things to come into the body. And if we utilize good practices and hydration and also good food, that's what we're doing is we're repurposing, we're opening up those channels so the good stuff can come in, right? And then it metabolizes the things that it doesn't need much better. So that is a hope when we do these practices. Hmm.
I've always found in breathwork sessions that I've attended that there's a consciousness expanding part of it as well, not just physical. How does that happen?
Sure. Well, that's the interesting piece. That's the sometimes there's the it happens, right? There is the physical piece, right? The anatomical piece, but then sometimes it's the just, you know what? Sometimes you can't explain things. Sometimes you just can't explain it. And the great thing about breath work too, and what we do too, is we use, music or distraction from the mind too as well. So we try to allow the thinking mind to kind of rest, right? And we try to work on the other parts of the mind of rest and digest, or, the frontal lobe, so to speak, opening up. The parts of the mind, also too with oxygen, right? When we send oxygen to parts of the mind and the brain, the same thing, right? So it expands the vessels, it opens up areas in the body that may have been constricted before, right? And it allows, a feeling of peace and bliss for some. Not everybody. Sometimes, I can certainly admit like some of my breath sessions have been really intense for me personally. Sometimes they can be very intense. And that's why you want someone with you, guiding you. However, there are those moments when you have the buildup of emotion, right? So, like sometimes with breath work, it builds, and then you might have a release of emotion that has been waiting there to be released, right? And then after that, that release is a feeling of peace. And it could be an emotion that was there waiting for years, right? And we don't even, and the wonderful thing about it is it gets rid of the thinking of it. We don't have to name it. I don't know why. And that's the nice thing too. We don't always have to know why in order to allow something to go, and to let go of something. And that is a nice thing too about breath work is there is an ability to release. And I know people say this all the time, but I say it too, release what doesn't have to be there.
Uh-huh.
And it doesn't have to have a name to it. And then be more in the, space, ethereal piece of yourself. Because we are a spirit. Well, I feel we are spiritual beings. So that is a way to do it in a safer way, and to be in that space. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
I think it's so nebulous, right? It's
Yes.
very, very hard to put a concrete label
Yeah.
or understanding in our materialist world as to
Right.
what the effects of something
Yeah.
like being focused on your breath can actually do for you. So
Yeah.
um I kind of put you on the spot, and I appreciate
No, it's
everything that
good.
you
And right,
do.
100%. And, we certainly can discuss, when we are in relaxation and the vagus nerve is involved, right? So, and that is one thing too that is important too to consider is when, and the vagus nerve touches is in the back, I believe is the cerebellum, that when we relax that piece of the body, the rest of the body can feel safe, right? And that also allows the space and place of feeling that peace within, and the peace in the mind. And it allows to, if there is any, stagnation in the mind or anything going on there when it comes to our thought processes and our loops that we go into as well, it does assist in creating a feeling of safety so you can work through those pieces as well, of course, with someone guiding you as well to guide you through that process. Um, when we over oxygenize anywhere, right, it goes where it needs to go, right? So, and that's also what's the nice thing about it is that we're not forcing anything. It's
Mhm.
just going where it needs to go. And that is a piece that seems to work. But along with the Vegas, the when we feel rest and digest, we're able to find balance and heal.
Which feels like a good time to return to how Ayurveda actually views and its perspective of autoimmune issues and
Mhm.
chronic disease. Do you want
Yeah.
to expand a little bit on that?
Sure. It's, of course, just like in anything else, it can be very complicated and really challenging to treat. And, um, you know, it's many different pieces. So when usually someone comes to us, it's a lot. There's a buildup of toxins in the body, right? So it could be any kind of toxin. It could be, a person could have had many medications and over time it just built up and the body could not process it anymore. It could have been any kind of treatment that they received outside that could have, impeded something in their immune system. It can be stress. We definitely relate in that way, when it comes to autoimmune issues. It could be unresolved emotions. It can also be, toxicity in the body, not enough lubrication in the spine. All of those things attribute to, autoimmune issues and chronic fatigue, chronic disease. And so we totally understand it. The way it's addressed, is one, we work really hard at trying to get all of the what we call ama or un or toxins out of the body. So it really is about lifestyle. It's about, working towards getting toxins out of the body, your diet. I don't like saying diet. I like saying, how you eat and how you treat your body. There's like, I don't really like to say diet because we don't care. Like diet's one thing, but it really is about what you're eating, how you're treating your skin and your body. And we do use herbs as well to provide a nourishment for the organs. If there's toxins in the organs or if there's, one of your organs is just not working properly, it happens, right? So where did it begin? Right? So, and I think, Ayurveda feels the same way. And in Ayurveda, there's three different, right, doshas, and there's three different kinds of autoimmune diseases that we place into their own little space and their own
Oh,
little
can you
characteristics.
elaborate on that?
Sure. So, vata is ether air. So there's, we think, well, I can describe vata as ether air. So it would be like rheumatoid arthritis. So it's air and ether. So it's painful. Pain is a sign of something going on with vata. With an MS as well, is also a description of with the vata piece. Pitta is, inflammation, red, right? So heat. So that could be psoriasis, things of that nature. Another form of arthritis, right, can be part of that as well. Kapha is interesting, and I always forget about this one because this one, there it could be a thyroid issue as well. So, and kapha also has like chronic fatigue. It's just like you can't move, right? It's just
Mhm.
you just are having a hard time moving. And when we understand how it behaves and the characteristics of these diseases or these sicknesses, we are able to kind of like then figure out, okay, how will we address these diseases, knowing how they behave and their characteristics and their elements and potentially organs. And then we go from there. And again, always we we become more cautious and we go towards, the dosha or the elements, right? So when we know the elements, we treat, right, for balance. Same thing. So, depending on, if you have an inflammation, we use, an anti-inflammatory type of herb, right? We utilize a lifestyle or diet that is more cooling, less inflammation in the body, right? So, or if we have a situation where there's more drying nature or more pain, that's the vata piece. So we'll, provide more soothing, more nurturing and nourishing and building lifestyle and practices and herbs as well. One big thing I do like to state is that there is a thing we utilize we do a lot of cleansing. So when we try to take care of the toxins in the body, that is a big piece too as well. Trying to cleanse the toxins out of the body, wash the body of anything that has been holding on, that we can take care of through, there's massage and there's this thing called Panchakarma. And that is a big reset for a lot of people that we do advise people to do when they have something, a diagnosis like this, and their body is able to do it. So you eat a certain kind of food and you go through a process of receiving massage with oil. We can go from like a couple days to, many days of a cleansing process to take care of your body beforehand and then rebuild the body from there. So one big piece of it is to go through a process of cleansing. Mhm.
The punch karma also includes enemas, correctly? Is
It
that
can.
correct?
It
Oh,
can.
not always.
It
Okay.
can. Yes, absolutely. It depends on the person.
Uh-huh.
If, there are some people that may not be ready for that, depending on their level of strength. We have to
Hmm.
truly evaluate someone before we really make a decision to do that. Depending on how long they've been suffering or dealing with the disease, or if they've become frail from it, or if their Agni is not quite there yet. We just want to make sure that it's a safe process for them. Yes, absolutely. That is a piece of it. But it also depends on the person. Yeah. So 5 actions. Panchakarma is 5. So it is
Wait, wait. What does that mean? Five
yeah,
actions. Punch karma
absolutely.
is
So
five.
yeah, Panchakarma is 5 actions. So 5 things we do in Panchakarma in the process. Um, and one is, preparing the body. So we oleate the internal part of the body. We eat a lot of ghee, or if not, coconut oil for some. There's the enema also as well. There's sweating, so we want someone to sweat. There's abhyanga, and then there's the eating the mono diet. And so all of those together create a panchakarma. So you can go places to do this. Some people do it at home. And that is also a piece of the process if someone's willing to go through it. Hmm.
Right. I know people who've done punch karma retreats for like
Yeah.
a week or so,
Hmm.
and it has been quite a healing experience and completely intensive.
Yes.
Um, you just are there and all you're doing is punch karma stuff. And the
Hmm.
diet, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like a macrobiotic type diet, mung beans, and I don't even remember what else is in there.
Yes, so it's rice and mung beans with a combination of spices, and some vegetables, not that much. And depending on what's going on, it also depends on your dosha too, as well, or what you're made out of. Like some of us have a hunger, so we might eat a little more than others, and some of us may not need as much. That is one piece of the puzzle. in the diet during that process. And it is so the digestion can rest, so your colon can rest, but at the same time can cleanse at the same time and create a digestive fire or metabolic fire in the stomach. And that is where we are trying to get the toxins out of the muscles and the whole body and bring it back to the stomach. And then the stomach can remetabolize it. And then that's where the enema is utilized. Um, so that is a big piece of it too, is just getting toxins out of the tissue of the body and to start over. Or it's just one of the many. It all depends on the person. And it is what we consider like a reset for the human body.
Mhm. Now, I know that you used Ayurvedic techniques to help yourself from your own autoimmune issues. Is there
Hmm.
anything that you can share about that journey?
Sure. The funny thing about it is that I didn't know what was happening when it happened. It snuck
Hmm.
up on me. And even when I was living this way, it was something I was just like, I definitely missed something. I definitely missed something on me. And that's why we go to people too, that's why we go as well. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. And so that is a big piece of it was like, I knew I was having these symptoms and I knew I was doing the best I could. However, there were life stressors that just happen. And, in some cases when, I have a client too, he's like, I was doing fine. And then all of a sudden I received really bad news. And the next thing I knew, I had to have, surgery, right?
Oh,
Because the one little change or one little stress can move something else, right? So, and that's what basically occurred, for me. And, my body was covered in you know, plaque psoriasis. And I was like, oh my
ooh.
gosh, like what happened to me, right? Like I was just like, what just happened? And it happened very quickly once it did finally take hold. Um, and I'm still working on it. It's just something that I could, though the thing about this is that I'm grateful for knowing what I know because I knew what it was. I knew what I could do and I knew how to help myself and I knew where to go and who to talk to. So, that's what occurred. And maybe this experience is just so I could learn how to do this. I don't know. There's always that question mark of the why, right? So yeah, and that's basically what it was. I went through the same process, right? I started making those changes again. I'm like, okay, maybe something changed in my body that I just my age even, can change. So, all right, I have to reattend to myself and make some changes that, I didn't know I had to make. And my body's been changing. So that's kind of what it is. And I've been able to take care of it naturally. Um, and, I also did Panchakarma myself. Not everybody can, but if you have the opportunity and you're able, try or, do it. There's also people that do some small, more gentle versions with you and guide you on your own if you would choose to do it at home. I always suggest do it with guide. I always say that do it with someone, a teacher, a guide. Please do not do, it's always to do with someone to guide you through the process, just so we're making sure that you're being tended to in a kind way and a gentle way as well. And that
Mhm.
it is considered still a gentle process. So your body can heal and find some balance. And we do the best we can to not suppress your immune system or overly ignite your immune system. Is to balance it and to slowly send you back to your center in homeostasis in the body. And that's what I have been doing the whole time. Just and the funny thing is that, and it's good to know this too. And the experience I had too was that I had to look at everything and start making those small tweaks and changes. And that's basically what I've been doing since I came upon this, or it came upon me. So it is the small changes that I did have to make. Everything had to change everything, and that's okay. And it took a very slow amount of time, and the bits that I've done have it's been, beneficial. And, and receiving the support, and that's some part of it too, as well, is like receiving the knowledge from others. when you're going through something. It's so important. A
Yes.
lot of these things, a lot of these come on because we're so self-sufficient. We don't ask for help, right? And a lot of this stress is because sometimes we just don't want to ask for help. And um, that's just kind of how we've all been or how we've been living. And, these are those moments where, asking for help is essential, and getting better. And there are so many of us out there that can provide that service.
Right.
Yeah.
Our American culture really tells us you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it all yourself and be the self-made person. And it's such a damaging patriarchal perspective on life, and it withdraws any impact of community and support from others, which is so essential to the human experience.
Yeah,
Are
absolutely.
there some breathwork techniques that we can share with people that they can use at home just right now to help themselves?
Absolutely. There's so many, right? So, um, there's two I go to often, um, because a lot of the times you want to kind of regulate yourself in the moment,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes there's something going on, like even if you're just stuck in traffic or, you're at work and you're sitting in front of your computer and, we're sitting a lot, right? And we're receiving information on our computers, like emails or any of those things. And, even though like we feel the stress, we can't get up and leave, right? So we're sitting in it, right? And I used to do this too when I worked in a cubicle a long time ago, and I still do. And I would hide a little bit behind my computer. Because back then people were kind of like, what are you doing? And I'm like, but now I think more people are knowledgeable of what it is. It's just the dual nostril breathing. So the practice is to just get you back to balance inside internally and just getting you back to a version of rest and digest internally when you're feeling distracted or having a hard time focus, things like that. So I do it very simply. I just block my right nostril
Hmm.
and I inhale on my left. And then I block my left nostril and I exhale on my right. And then I go the opposite direction. And then I inhale on my right. And then I hold my right and I exhale on my left. And then I go through the cycle again. So I can show you if you like, if you want to see, and then people can try. I think it's everywhere, right? So inhale, well, of course, looks like my right, hold, exhale on the left, then inhale, hold, exhale on the left. And then I just keep going through that cycle. Um, and that usually brings me back to a calmer state. You can probably tell the tone of my voice might have changed, and that's really helpful. The other one is it's may not be breath work, but it's also there's a humming. Everyone has learned humming also helps with the vagus nerve and toning
Hmm. Hmm.
the mind and calming them. So we just close the eyes and the ears and close our mouths and we just hum. That's also very helpful. Another one is I do this when I'm feeling kind of tired.
Hmm.
So I just inhale like I'm breathing through a straw, right? So I inhale and exhale through my nose. And that one is also really helpful to kind of just like get calm, but also kind of wake up a little bit. We inhale. Yeah. And that one also helps if you feel a little congested in your chest. Um, but it does allow you to kind of become more awake, but also still calm in your situation or where you are. So I do that a lot when I'm driving, if I'm tired, if I'm driving for a long time to wake up.
Hmm. Yeah.
And the dual nostril breathing is great for just calming the mind, just bringing yourself back to a balance. Um, and the humming um, is also helpful as well, just to calm the mind and bring you back down. Because sometimes we get, I use that one if I'm like just thinking a lot. If I'm been like
Mhm.
considering something and I'm like, all right, what should I do? Where am I going with this? That type of breathing just helps you bring you back to a calmer state so the mind can be more focused. And really, a lot of it, what it is just letting go of these distractions and coming back to the center and coming back into the body. And feeling safe and being safe in your body. And that really does assist in that. So those are three that are go-tos that are helpful. The cyclical breathing, I always say you do it with someone. That one is some people call it circular breathing. That one I always advise to do with a guide. So that is not to be done while driving, not to be done while doing anything. That is a whole other experience. That is why the pranayama is so wonderful too as well, because that one you can do in the moment, wherever you are. And once you understand, the techniques and how it works for you, and this stuff is all, out there, but those three are my go-tos personally. When I'm
Thank you so much. This has been very enlightening and very interesting, especially for anyone who really hasn't been exposed to Ayurvedic work before or breath work and these different practices that come from the indigenous world. So they predate by millennia our modern medical world and the perspective that we have now that we're so indoctrinated in. So I really appreciate that you brought your perspective today. How
Oh,
can people find you to learn more about what you do?
Sure, you can just go to my website. It's www.seedthespirit.com. I am on Facebook with under Seed the Spirit. And it's under Brett Perrin as well, if you'd like to look there is in on Instagram as well. So that's how you can find me. And my website has a way to connect with me too as well. You can just click for a 20-minute conversation with me and, discuss further about any other questions that people have.
Fantastic. Brett, thank you so much for coming on the Inflammation Investigator. I think this is a wonderful perspective to add to our body of knowledge.
Right. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
And that's another case filed on the Inflammation Investigator. Remember, every symptom is your body's way of communicating. We just need to learn the language. If today's episode sparked something for you, I want to hear about it. Share your own investigation discoveries with me on social media at Elizabeth Yarnell, or find me at elizabethyarnell.com. Your experience could be exactly what another listener needs to hear. And make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And here's the thing about investigations: they work best when you're not going it alone. If this podcast is helping you uncover the answers you've been searching for, please like, rate, subscribe, and review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. As a new podcast, these actions mean more than you know. Want to dive deeper into your own inflammation investigation? Head over to inflammationinvestigator.com, where you can take my free inflammation quiz to uncover which hidden triggers might be affecting your health. Until next time, this is Elizabeth Yarnell, your inflammation investigator, reminding you that the solutions to your health issues are out there. Let's find them together.